Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you listening. I hope that you are all fit and well. You join me today for sermon number 40 in our series examining the book of Daniel. We will pick up today where we left off last time. Hopefully that you will remember that we are midway through chapter number 11, and our reading for today is verses 20 to 28 of chapter number 11. So this is Daniel chapter 11, verses 20 to 28. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honour of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably, and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away before him, and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table. But it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant. So he shall do damage and return to his own land. This is the word of the Lord. Today we pick up at the point where we left off last time. A whole week has passed, so allow me to briefly touch upon some of the main points. Chapter 11 contains one of the most detailed prophecies contained within the pages of Scripture. It is so wonderfully precise that only a supernatural explanation can account for its accuracy. Only God, of course, knows the beginning from the end. We know that it had a supernatural source because the prophecy came via the angel Gabriel, a supernatural being, who was sent by God to reveal these things to the prophet Daniel. The prophecy primarily concerns the fortunes of God's people, the Jews, Jerusalem and the temple. The first part of the prophecy tells us in considerable detail about many of the historic events that would be taking place between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC. In particular, it reveals some of the conflicts that took place between the kings of the north, the Seleucid Empire, and the kings of the south, the Ptolemaic Empire. Both of these empires came into existence following the death of Alexander the Great. As we have seen in previous studies, the Greek Empire that he founded was divided among 4 of his generals. The prophecy only focuses on 2 of these empires. This is because they were Israel's closest neighbours, and their actions massively impacted God's people. The second part of the prophecy will outline what will occur prior to the second advent of the Messiah. Well, let's quickly recap some of the historic events that we looked at last time. We pick up the story with Seleucus II Callinicus. He was typical of most of the Seleucid rulers in that he deeply disliked the Ptolemaic Empire and wanted to conquer it. He was particularly unhappy because Ptolemy III had attacked his kingdom and carried off a great deal of treasure, including their valuable religious idols. He organised an attack which proved to be unsuccessful. We then jumped ahead to look at the fate of his 2 sons. The first son was unimaginatively named Seleucus III Soter. The second son was called Antiochus III Magnus. Seleucus III reigned for just 2 years. It was Antiochus III who would go on to greatness. He enjoyed considerable military and political success, and he was able, during his time in power, to push the borders of the Ptolemaic Empire right back, but ultimately he was unable to conquer their homeland of Egypt. His advances were halted at the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC. Antiochus III retreated north, but his ambitions were not thwarted. He spent a decade expanding his empire east and north. He also built up and re-equipped his army for an eventual move south. Finally, in 204 BC, he had the perfect opportunity. Ptolemy IV died and was replaced on the throne by his 6-year-old son Ptolemy V. Antiochus III's forces attacked. He was joined in the assault by King Philip V of Macedonia, and also a considerable number of zealous Israelites who were hoping to secure Jewish independence. Antiochus III and his combined forces were victorious. They captured all of what had formerly been Israel. Buoyed by this success, he enviously eyed Egypt. It was ripe for being conquered. However, at this point in history, Rome stepped in. They warned Antiochus III not to attack their Ptolemaic allies. This news left Antiochus III in something of a quandary. He really wanted to take Egypt, but he knew that he could not go up against the might of the Romans. He therefore devised a clever plan. It was a plan that he hoped would bring the empires of the north and south together. He proposed a marriage union between his daughter Cleopatra I and the Ptolemaic ruler Ptolemy V Epiphanes. What he really wanted was for his daughter to act as a spy and to work to undermine the Ptolemaic Empire. The plan badly backfired. Cleopatra loved Ptolemy V and her new home. She refused to help her father. Well, how did Antiochus III respond to all of this? Well, he was a man of action, not introspection, and so he went on the offensive. He attacked a number of Egyptian colonies and then set his sights on Greece. Initially, he made good progress into Greece and won some notable victories, but then the Romans became involved. Their navy and military was superior to anything that the Seleucids had to offer. Once they engaged in the fight, Antiochus III's forces were soon beaten back. In particular, the Roman general Lucius Cornelius Scipio won some very impressive victories. Badly beaten, Antiochus III was forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty and return home. He was to die in the year 187 BC, as he raided a temple in his own land in order to pay tribute to Rome. And it was at this point that we concluded last time. Verse 20. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. As we saw last time, Antiochus III had been incredibly overambitious. He believed his military forces capable of conquering Greece. What he really wanted was to reunite Alexander's empire. He hearkened back to the glories of the past. He may have been successful in this endeavour had it not been for the involvement of the Romans. But unfortunately for him, they did engage, and the result was a humiliating defeat for the Seleucids. The Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC proved a decisive moment in the conflict. According to the Roman historian Livy, 50,000 Seleucid infantry and 3,000 cavalry were killed. The Romans lost only 300 infantry and 24 cavalry. Now, ancient historians cannot always be trusted, especially when it comes to figures, but even accounting for probable exaggeration, it was still a crushing blow to Seleucid military power. Antiochus III went home and died in the year 187 BC. He was succeeded to the throne by his son Seleucus IV Philopator. He is referred to here in this verse as the one who shall arise. Now the Romans had been greatly annoyed by the Seleucids' attack against Greece. They determined to extract as much as possible from them as a form of retribution. As part of the conditions for peace, which came through the Atranda Treaty, an annual fine was levied. This fine amounted to 1,000 talents, which was to be paid on a yearly basis. That's a huge sum of money. I consulted the Ancient Money Calculator, which is a very useful online resource. They provide a rough estimate of the value of money during the intertestamental period. Now, according to their website, 1,000 talents would be roughly equivalent to around about $261 million today. Well, that's a lot of money to have to scrape together. How did Seleucus IV manage it? By, you guessed it, massively raising taxes. His primary occupation in life became collecting money. This, as I'm sure you can imagine, made him very popular among the common people. He also arranged for his brother Mithridates to be returned from political custody in Rome. He, remember, had been left by his father as part of the peace treaty. But don't forget him. He'll turn out to be very important later on. Seleucus IV taxed his own people very heavily, but he also looked to impose higher taxes on the glorious kingdom. Once again, this is a reference to Israel. He sent his Jewish finance minister Heliodorus down to confiscate funds in the treasury of the Jewish temple. This apparently was a complete failure. The book of 2 Maccabees preserves a tradition that he was miraculously prevented from plundering the temple. Heliodorus returned empty-handed to Seleucus. Now, King Seleucus IV did not enjoy a long and happy reign. Rulers who impose burdensome taxes are seldom well liked. He did not, exactly as prophesied by the angel, die in anger, mob violence like his father, or on the battlefield. His demise came very differently. Remember his Jewish finance minister Heliodorus? Well, in 175 BC, he plotted a coup and poisoned Seleucus IV. The coup eventually failed, and Heliodorus fled the scene. And who was it who would replace him? It was someone that we have met before. God gives us more information on this particular person than on any of the preceding kings or rulers mentioned in this prophecy combined. The reason for this is that he will go on to have such a devastating influence on the Jewish people. Have you guessed who it is yet? Well, let us continue. Verse number 21. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honour of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. After the murder of Seleucus IV and the failed coup, Mithridates became the king. Actually, by rights, it should have gone to one of Seleucus IV's sons, Demetrius Soter, but there was no way that Mithridates would allow this to happen. He took power illegally, using political intrigue and the help of conspirators. He would go on to become one of the Bible's, in fact history's, great villains. Now you might not recognise his name, and that's because he's far better known by another name. Upon becoming the king, he underwent a name change. Now I'm sure that you've guessed who it is that I'm talking about. This is none other than Antiochus IV Epiphanes, God manifest, the first Antichrist. This truly vile, contemptible individual would go on to bring absolute horror and devastation upon God's people. The reason for this stemmed primarily from his zeal for all things Greek. He wanted to force Hellenism upon all of his subjects. He would not permit any objections. The Jews were a particular problem to him because they wanted to remain Jewish and, more importantly, hold on to their own religion. They would never succumb, it seems, to pagan idol worship. But let's read on and find out what happens next. Verses 22 and 23. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him, and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. Initially, as we read here, Antiochus IV would have some military success. Part of this was due to the alliances that he had with some of his bordering kingdoms. They willingly united with him and helped him to succeed. He was also very wise in not engaging with the Romans. He did nothing to antagonize them. Instead, as we might expect, his eyes went south to the Ptolemaic Empire, ruled at this time by Ptolemy VI. He attacked Egypt and swept all before him. In 170 BC, he had a notable victory at the city of Pelusium. This gateway city gave him free access to Egyptian territory. His army pressed their advantage, overrunning the nation and even taking the Egyptian king prisoner. Egypt was reduced to being a dummy state, a nation subject to the commands or whims of another. This verse also mentions some action that Antiochus would take against the Prince of the Covenant. Even with the benefit of historical hindsight, opinions do vary as to whom this refers. Some take it to be a reference to the Jewish high priest Onias III, the idea being that he is the chief priest, prince, or ruler under the covenant which God made with his people. Antiochus ousted Onias from office and replaced him with his brother, a man named Jason. The reason for this political move was that Onias had tried to resist the Hellenization of the empire. Jason, who was far more compliant, had bribed the king with money and also promised him that he would support him in whatever he wanted to do. Others think that it's a reference to the king of Egypt, the prince mentioned here. The covenant in this instance refers to an agreement or covenant signed between the king of Egypt and Antiochus the Great. Another common alternative is to say that this verse implies all of Antiochus's conquests and victories against both secular and religious leaders. When it comes to verse 23, there is again some disagreement. It most probably refers to the alliance that Antiochus made with Ptolemy VI in 170 BC. This treaty was part of a plot to advance his own power in Egypt by siding with Ptolemy VI and against his rival for the Egyptian throne. This all gives us a valuable insight into how Antiochus Epiphanes ruled. He was clever, cunning, and deceitful. Often with just a small number of manipulators on his side, he could influence or sway things in his direction. Well, let us read on. Verse 24. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do whatever his fathers had not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. Whilst Antiochus Epiphanes was indeed a wicked and vile individual, he was also very smart. He noted where the richest and most prosperous places were in his empire and went there. Here in the New King James Version it says that he entered peaceably. Other Bible versions translate this Hebrew word shalva as quietly or without warning. This, I think, is probably what is in view here. Antiochus was crafty in the way that he managed his empire. He didn't go storming around with a vast army. Rather, he went quietly and took exactly what he wanted before people were properly prepared to stop him. He did, however, differ in one important way from his predecessors. They had frequently been greedy men who took things in order to grow personally rich. But Antiochus Epiphanes was different. He took things in order to bribe, manipulate, or persuade others to join or support him. It proved to be a highly successful strategy. Here, I'll give you all of this gold if you promise not to stand against my army when I attack this city. A great part of his success, we read here, came in doing what his forefathers and fathers had been unable to do. Again, there is some disagreement on exactly what this means, but most commentators think it refers to his conquest of Egypt and his ability to take so much from it. Every other Seleucid ruler had wanted to do this, but it was Antiochus who finally managed it. However, once again his success was only to be for a short time. Let's read on and learn more about this. Verse 25. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. As we have seen, Antiochus had already enjoyed considerable success against the southern empire of the Ptolemies. During the course of his reign, he launched 4 separate attacks against Egypt. So there is some debate as to which attack is being referenced here. Let's assume that what we are reading here is a reference to the first successful raid. This took place in 170 AD and saw the Seleucid forces advance as far as the Nile Delta. This, as you can see on the map, is quite an incursion into Egypt. They progressed all of this way before the Egyptians were able to rally the troops and put an army onto the field. Some commentaries say that the Egyptians didn't even notice their arrival, which doesn't say very much for their border patrols. The Egyptian forces finally managed to halt their progress, but Antiochus was able to exert a great deal of influence over the nation of Egypt. This didn't only come militarily on the battlefield. Antiochus was a skilled political manipulator. As Antiochus continued to dominate, he was aided by political intrigue within the Egyptian ruling classes. He was able to manipulate high-ranking officials to side with him against their own nation. And this is exactly what happened here. Antiochus was so successful because the counselors of the Egyptian king betrayed him. His own trusted counselors turned against him, exactly as had been prophesied by the angel Gabriel. Well, let us read on. Verse 26. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Here's a question for you. Who do you share meals with? At work or even after church? Who do you sit down with to have lunch? The answer, of course, is people with whom you are close or at least friendly. We don't usually eat with complete strangers, and we almost never sit down to eat with people that we dislike or whom we consider our enemies. This was especially true in the ancient world. When you sat down to eat, you were potentially very vulnerable. To share a meal, therefore, required great trust. And that's the point here. The king of Egypt, in this case Ptolemy VI, was betrayed by people who claimed, or pretended, to be on his side. The city of Alexandria in Egypt, for example, swore allegiance to the king's brother, Ptolemy VIII. So Ptolemy VI was let down by people close enough to be sharing his special choice foods. This means they were his closest, most treasured advisers and confidants. Ultimately, what happened as a result of this betrayal was that the Egyptian army suffered a catastrophic defeat in which many soldiers were slain. Sadly, how often that seems to be the case. Politicians in smoky rooms make deals which result in regular soldiers being sent to fight and die. Well, let us read on. Verse 27. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table. But it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. What a deeply sad critique this is of these two kings, Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI, that both of them were determined to act in evil ways. The King James Version of the Bible translates this in, I think, a most illuminating way. It says that both kings shall be set upon doing mischief. It's a rather archaic English expression and not very commonly used today, but I remember as a child being caught doing something naughty. I would be accused of getting up to mischief, that I had acted in a way that brought damage or injury against another person or thing. We all hope, perhaps naively, that those who rule over us have our best interests at heart, We all want to believe that the decisions our leaders make are intended for our well-being and flourishing. Sadly, they usually are not. It's therefore a timely reminder that people in power are often wicked and corrupt. They are interested primarily in two things only: maintaining power and furthering their own self-interests. The angel here is talking about a meeting, a peace conference, that took place between Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI in the Egyptian city of Memphis. The two men sat together at a table to discuss things. As I mentioned to you before, sitting together at a table, sharing a meal, was an ancient sign of friendship, cordiality and peace. Psalm 41:9 mentions this tradition as being a symbol of friendship. Even my own familiar friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. However, on this particular occasion, neither of the men is being open and honest. They are pretending to be on good terms and are even acting in a friendly way towards each other, but it's all a facade. They are, in fact, lying to each other because they are only concerned with what will benefit them. To put it simply, they are being very selfish. Ptolemy promised to stop fighting and keep the peace, but he had no intention of doing this. Antiochus also vowed to keep the peace, but secretly he wanted to take possession of Egypt through deception. The outcome of all of it, not surprisingly, was a failure. As we know, peace negotiations can only work if both sides are transparent and upfront about what they want and are willing to concede. I'm afraid that this is why I'm not hopeful when it comes to a lasting peace settlement in Israel. Whilst Hamas is controlling things, or at least manipulating things in the background, how can you have peace? Their avowed aim, after all, is to wipe Israel off the map. How can that ever be a foundation for a lasting peace? The fragile peace that existed for a short time between the Seleucids and the Ptolemaic empires would also not last. The reason for this is stated at the end of this verse. Neither got what they wanted because it was not yet the appointed time. When we read this, we should be reminded that all of the plans and schemes of men rest upon the hands of the sovereign God. Men might say, well, I'll do this and I'll do that. But unless God allows it to take place, it simply will not happen. But let's now turn to our final verse for today. Verse 28. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. Following the peace conference, Antiochus temporarily turned his attention from Egypt to Israel. The year is 168 BC. As he was travelling back north with all the booty that he had plundered, he heard some disturbing news. Whilst he had been away on campaign, things had become very unsettled in Israel. A rumour, you see, had circulated that Antiochus had been killed in the fighting in Egypt. This presented an opportunity for Jason. Remember him? He had been the high priest installed by Antiochus, but in the intervening years he had been replaced in this office by Melanius. Jason wanted his old job back, so around 1,000 of his supporters seized this opportunity and murdered many of Melanius' supporters. The situation had become incredibly volatile. Serious trouble was brewing. Therefore Antiochus decided to stop off at Jerusalem and bring order. He was worried that Jason might side with the Egyptians and undermine his power. Antiochus arrived with a vengeance. Unfortunately, Antiochus believed that this was a more general Jewish uprising. Therefore, upon his arrival, he promptly killed 80,000 Jewish men. In this extreme show of force, he effectively quashed Jason's attempt to regain power and reinstated Melanius as high priest. Most terrible of all was his desecration of the temple itself. We are told here that his heart was moved against the Holy Covenant. This means that he was angry that God had made a promise or an agreement with a special chosen people. He hated the laws that God had given his people and desired to see them abolished. Antiochus Epiphanes, of course, was a Gentile. Therefore he was forbidden from entering the inner part of the temple. This, however, did not deter him. He went in and took many precious items from within. This is how his actions are recorded in the first book of Maccabees. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were. It's from 1 Maccabees chapter 1. The Jews were, as you can imagine, greatly upset by all of this. Antiochus's actions would lead to a series of Jewish reprisals. They in turn would result a year later in a second, far more horrific visit by this vile king and his forces. But that will be the subject, Lord willing, of our sermon next time. Lessons to learn. I have 2 lessons drawn from today's passage. Number 1, be truth-tellers. In our account today, we read about the peace conference that took place between Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI. The meeting and their discussions ended in failure because they both lied. They did not come to the discussion table with genuine intentions of reaching an agreement. As I thought about this situation, it made me think about the whole idea of deception and lies. The Bible is clear that lying is a sin and is therefore displeasing to God. The first sin in this world involved a lie told by Satan to Eve. The 10 Commandments given to Moses includes the command not to bear false witness against your neighbour. Literally put, don't tell lies about your neighbours. Colossians 3:9 says, do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds. Lying is listed in 1 Timothy as something practised by the lawless. Furthermore, lies will be among those judged in the end. In contrast, God never lies. He is the source of truth, and it's impossible for God to lie. In the early church, Ananias and Sapphira lied regarding a donation in order to make themselves look more generous than they really were. Peter rebuked them sternly. God's judgment was sterner still. The couple died as a result of their sin. So it's really quite clear-cut. Black and white with no grey area. Or is it? Augustine once said, whether we should ever tell a lie, if it be for someone's welfare, is a question that has vexed even the most learned. For example, if a husband is ever asked by his wife whether she looks fat in whatever she is currently wearing, the answer, no matter the truth, is always that she looks beautiful. Husbands who fail to lie in this situation soon regret it. But joking aside, let me give you a more challenging dilemma. Imagine in occupied Holland during the Second World War. A Dutch family are hiding a Jewish family in the attic from the Nazis. One night there's a loud knock on the door. The father opens the door and is asked by a German officer if he is hiding any Jews in his house. If he tells the truth, the Jews, along with him and his own family, will be arrested and probably killed. Should he lie in this situation or tell the truth? This incident actually occurred to Corrie ten Boom. There are at least 2 instances in the Bible where telling a lie resulted in a favourable result. Take, for example, the lie that the Hebrew midwives tell Pharaoh about the speedy births of Hebrew women. This lie resulted in the Lord blessing them. It also probably saved the lives of many Hebrew babies. Another example is Rahab's lie to protect the Israelite spies in Joshua chapter 2. Now, it is important for us to note, however, that God never condones these lies. Despite the positive outcome of these lies, the Bible nowhere praises the lies themselves. Both of these incidents were very specific and very rare. The lie that was told in each case prevented a much greater evil from taking place, and this, I believe, is an important distinction. In most cases, the lies that we tell do not, of course, fall into this category. We are not telling lies to save people from being cruelly and unfairly murdered. The vast majority of the lies people tell are to protect themselves, promote themselves, or do some harm to someone else. That is why the Bible so clearly, strongly, and consistently condemns lying as a sin. So may all of us attempt to be truth-tellers in our daily interactions with others. Number 2. God's timing. In our account today, we read that the king's plans were thwarted because they didn't mesh with God's timing. They may have set targets and dates for when they wanted things to happen, but God disagreed. One of the questions that people often ask pastors is related to God's timing. They want to know, for understandable reasons, all about God's timing. When they ask, will God act? Or more often, why isn't God acting right now? The first thing to say in answer to these kinds of questions is as follows. God's timing is always perfect. He's never early, never late. He's always perfectly on time. You can take great comfort from this fact. From even before our births until the moment that we take our last earthly breath, our sovereign God is accomplishing his divine purposes in our lives. He is in complete control of everything and everyone, from everlasting to everlasting. No event in history has put so much as a wrinkle in the timing of God's eternal plan, which he designed before the foundation of the world. When we question God's timing, it's usually because we are looking for guidance or deliverance from a difficult situation. We want God to act to help us in a particular time of need. Again, let me assure you that our loving Heavenly Father knows exactly where we are in our lives at every moment. He either put us there or is allowing us to be there. Even times of difficulty are often part of God's plan. God often uses trials to help strengthen our patience. This encourages us to mature in our faith. Never forget that God always hears the cries of his children and will answer those cries according to his perfect will and timing. The plans God has for us are good. His timing is always perfect. Let me leave you with the word that God gave to the prophet Jeremiah. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Take comfort and hope, brothers and sisters, in knowing that God loves you and has prepared a glorious future for you.
Also, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others besides these. Also the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes. and he shall gain power over him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And at the end of some years they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand. But she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. But from a branch of her roots one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them, and prevail. And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt, with their princes and their precious articles of silver and gold. And he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Also, the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his sons shall stir up strife, and assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. And the king of the south shall be moved with rage, and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Now, in those times, many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also, violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound, and take a fortified city. And the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it. But she shall not stand with him, or be for him. After this he shall turn his face to the coastlands, and shall take many. But a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end. And with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and not be found. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom. But within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty. But he shall come in peaceably, and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him, and be broken. And also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, For he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table. But it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant. So he shall do damage and return to his own land. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south. But it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved, and return in rage against the holy covenant, and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant, and forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices, and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. Now, when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help. But many shall join with them by intrigue, and some of those of understanding shall fall to refine them, purify them, and make them white, until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a god of fortresses, and a god which his fathers did not know he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and divide the land for gain. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape from his hand, Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans and Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him.